Well, other than the fact that I was born at a very young age, uh, all I know about that is I was born at home. My folks in those days, my father particularly in those days, didn't believe in having children in a hospital because hospitals were subject to kidnapping and switching of babies, and he didn't want to take any chances. He wanted to be stuck with what was his.
Did that really happen, or was that just
Well,
a Charlie
It happened,
Turk
but I don't
ism?
know how prevalent it was. Uh, Apparently, it had happened at or about the time he was going through his childbearing years, and he just preferred to have his children born at home.
Everett was born at home?
Well, if
You
naturally
think?
Everett came 5.5 years before me, yes, he was born at home. I don't know where home was at that time. I was born on 948 Tiffany Street. Now, then, shortly after I was born, in my first year of life, the folks moved from there to Fort Washington Avenue, around 178th, 180th Street, in the area where the George Washington Bridge
Yeah.
is now based. The bridge was built, was well under construction while we were up in Washington Heights. Then when we moved to 97th and West End Avenue, I remember seeing all the other three corners built. On the south, we were in the northwest corner. The southeast corner was the Hotel Paris. We used to keep all of our turtles in the balcony. Yeah. And I was recovering from pneumonia, I remember it. And I sat on the outside with my feet dangling over West End Avenue, and people were waving out of the window, and I'd wave back to them. I didn't realize it was dangerous.
This is shortly after you moved in. You were a little kid.
Oh yeah, but we already lived there 3 years.
I see. And so you lived there until roughly 29?
1929, maybe 1930.
Okay. So you were there during the crash.
Oh yeah. And then we moved out of there to 216 West 89th Street.
Right, which is still very much there.
We stayed there for maybe a year or 2 years. I came home from school one day, and there was a big notice on the door, dispossessed.
Well, why did you move from West End Avenue? I'm not clear. Was it just too much
Couldn't
money?
pay the rent.
And you couldn't pay the rent on 89th Street either.
89th Street, they didn't know us, we couldn't pay the rent. My father apparently made an arrangement with Sam Whitty and went to him and said, I can't pay you much rent, and whatever I don't pay you, I will owe you and make it up to you. And Sam Whitty, on a shake of hands, let him rent the apartment, and that's where you live right now.
No kidding. No kidding.
Well, we used to have street baseball from one curb to the next curb, first base, second base, and home. You'd throw a rubber ball, one bounce, and you hit it, and the other guy would field it, and you had to run to first base, and you hit the ball against across the street, and if it hits the other building, you got a home run.
If it hit Astor Court.
That's right. Well, only we used to do it up up near the Amsterdam Avenue.
So
And across the street was the temple that I got bar mitzvah in.
that's right. That's the one that we see, I believe, from our kitchen.
That's right.
That's interesting. Okay. So you're living at 215 West 90th. The boys, you and Everett shared a room. Burton had his own room, and then you're at PS 93 on 93rd Street.
That was for elementary school to the 4th grade, and then we had to get out of there.
And why is that?
I don't think boys went to that school after the 4th grade.
Okay.
I'm almost positive it was a girls' school thereafter.
Is that when you ended up going to what is
166 on 89th Street.
across from the stables?
Claremont Academy, yeah. That's still there.
And it's still there. Those were those riding stables at the time for
Yeah.
recreational?
Yeah, oh sure.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
It's the same thing. I don't think they're used for
Still
anything else.
woefully is. The horses would go up 91st Street, and they came down from Central Park on 90th Street. Yeah.
You've told me on a couple of occasions that you had a driver drive you to school.
That was in 771
West
West
End?
End Avenue. Bernard was the driver, chauffeur. My father always had a Cadillac, and he had a chauffeur.
So where did Poppy get the money? That sounds like a pretty...
He was a
Exotic
self-made.
thing.
He was a self-made man. He was the second of 5 brothers. His older brother was Bill. Charlie was my father. Harry, Louis, and Willie. He was the second of 5 boys.
There was a Bill and a Willie.
That's right.
2 Williams.
Don't ask me. I never figured that one out.
Your dad had his own business, and he was buying and selling
Dress trimmings
from Europe,
from Europe.
primarily. Did well with it,
He
obviously.
knew fashion, and he had a good sense of taste, and he brought in the new look when it was still new, and he was a leader in his field, and he did very well. He was a millionaire before he was 30 years old. He became an importer in his own name.
At 21?
At the age of 21, he started in business for himself. He was 28 years old. He was on the first ship that went to Europe after World War I was over, and that's when he started to import in his own name in a big way. And he made 26 round-trip crossings by ship going to Europe, and he made a lot of money, as an importer. You heard of 1929, when the stock market crashed? Well, he was a millionaire before that time. But, like many millionaires, he had bought a lot of stock on 10% margin. And when the stock went down, and he had to come up with a margin call, couldn't do it, they sold him out. And he owed his life. He owed everything. I remember in the 1930s getting dispossessed notices coming home from school. This place was sealed by
This wasn't paying the rent.
couldn't pay the rent. The dress trimming business went to pot.
Right.
And after 1929, the flapper age was over, and we came into a new era. It was the Great Depression, and he had no money. But he had a cousin, a distant cousin, who happened to be a Internal Revenue examiner, and he put up some money together with a few dollars that my father had, and started Auburn Fabrics in 1937. That's the way Auburn was born, and we were in the fabric business.
And was Auburn always at 215 West 40th? Oh no, I remember when it was on 39th Street, no?
No, Auburn came into existence in 1450 Broadway.
1450 Broadway. Okay.
Longshanks was downstairs, the restaurant. And I remember we had 3 different lofts in that building. First we were overlooking Broadway, next door to Fruit of the Loom, the main office of Fruit of the Loom, and then we moved back on 41st Street, overlooking 41st Street, and then we moved into an inner one where we had a good view of the nothing courtyard. There was a shaft of light came in. Well, when World War II came along, they wanted us out.
Right.
It wasn't that the war had nothing to do with getting us out, but apparently Bayer Aspirin, whoever the company is that owned Bayer Aspirin, a pharmaceutical company.
Okay.
bought the building, and they made a deal with the existing tenants to move out after a certain amount of time. A lease for a certain amount of time, and then they had to be out. And that's when we moved.
You went to DeWitt Clinton, is that
DeWitt
correct?
Clinton High School. First I was
What years is that?
34 to 38. High school, I used to work after school.
Oh yeah?
I used to go to school, and then when I came home from school, I had to earn some money.
What did you do? What kind of jobs?
Delivering dresses on roller skates.
For your father?
No, for the woman, Pearl Jacobs, who was in the office downstairs.
The office downstairs from your father?
215 West 90th Street.
Oh, at 215. Oh, there was a dressmaker in the building.
When you go out the front door and you took a left,
Yeah,
there was a stoop.
yeah,
And on the right-hand side was Dr. Greenberg, the dentist.
yes.
And on the left-hand side was Pearl Jacobs, the
That's
dress shop.
interesting, because a dentist is still there. Not the same dentist, but I don't know what's in that other space. Maybe there's this.
I used to deliver dresses for her.
No kidding.
Yeah.
How much would you make? Do you remember?
I used to get a quarter for delivering a dress any place in Manhattan. And if I went by roller skates, I used to get an extra dime.
And were there any particular classes that you liked in high school? Anything that
Well,
interested you particularly?
not particularly. The one I remember best was typewriting. It was a course. It was a class I took because it could be helpful, and the best course. It's the course I remember best because it got me through college, and to this day I'm a typist, a touch typist.
Yeah.
I used to type 60 words a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, that's based on correct words.
Yeah. And then at some point, when you graduated in '38, is that when you enlisted at NYU?
And then I enrolled in NYU.
Any particular interests when you were there?
business
Business? And where did you live when you went to NYU? At home?
at home.
You did live at home.
No campus life whatsoever.
And did you attend Washington Square?
Yeah.
As well as Uptown, no?
Nope. I went uptown for track. I used to go, I was on the track squad up there. We used to play hockey, roller hockey, between 94th and 95th Street, between the tennis courts on 95th to 6th and 5th to 4th, 94th. Those were 2 blocks of tennis courts.
Where?
Where there is now a public school.
Oh, on West End.
Yeah.
Oh, is that
And
right?
It was playing hockey there one day that somebody's stick went like this into Mevy's front tooth, and he spits out his front tooth.
Yeah.
He said, "Oh, is my mother gonna kill me?" And he had a false tooth ever since then. So yeah, after 1 year at Missouri, Mevy came back, Christmas holidays, and said what a great place it was. I agitated and got my parents to let me go out to Missouri. It cost money to go out there, even then, but I was paying $15, $11 of credit for 16 credits, which is like $176 per semester. At NYU, when I went to Missouri as an out-of-state student, I had to pay $300. So that was expensive,
Yeah.
but it still was out of town, and I wanted to get a little taste of college life. I wanted to be on my own a little bit, be somewhat independent.
Uh-huh.
But they sent me off in good style, and the money was still not plentiful, but I used to get a $5 bill from my aunt or a $10 bill from my mother. She sent out something. I used to get a monthly check. Well, the house bill was $45, and I used to get $25 for spending money for the month.
That must have been awfully far away in those days. Missouri.
Oh, it was practically an
end of the
all-day
world.
train ride.
I guess that's how you get out there, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, we didn't fly. Never flew.
There were no super savers back then, huh?
I transferred to Missouri, and the first thing I know, they got me listed as a member of the freshman class.
Mm-hmm.
I just lost 2 years. I was on the squad
This is at Missouri.
at Missouri. I mean, John Munsky was our star miler at the time.
Had you heard of him before you went out to Missouri?
No. Jack Matthews was the coach for me, my coach. He was the one that was timing John Munsky on one day on the indoor track, the Brewer Field House, 8 laps to the mile. I mean, it was an eighth of a mile track. Flat track, no banking, cinder track. And John was running a test 3/4 mile. I mean, fast 3/4 mile, and then quit running. And he was coming down the straightaway of the home stretch of the third quarter, finishing the third quarter mile. And the coach asked him, "How do you feel?" He says, "Fine." He says, "Take 2 more laps." He took 2 more laps, and he finished under 4 minutes for the mile.
What year is this now?
1942.
42, and the world record in the mile at that time?
It was 4011, something like that.
Okay, so it was believed that someday somebody would do it. It was just...
Oh yeah, they knew eventually they'll break the 4-minute mile, but until then it was unheard of. And I saw him run the first sub 4-minute mile. But the coach looked at me and said, "Don't say a thing." And I would go on the... I was never good enough to run the mile. I mean, my best mile was 4 minutes 50 seconds, which by some standards is considered good, but not by collegiate standards.
So you didn't compete, you were merely a...
I competed once against some junior colleges, around a half mile.
What could you run a half mile in?
I ran it in 206 or 209 when I ran in that half mile. I came in second or third.
Sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, but never good enough for big league stuff. I met Mom in February of 1942. And after one date, I tied her up for all the rest of her dates for that year. 'Cause I knew I found a keeper. Anyway, we were steadies through the end of my college days. I had met Nanny Koo, that's Mom's mother. And she told me to go home and meet a nice Jewish girl.
That was not considered okay, huh?
Well,
in her book?
It was, it was potential trouble. And
now, her father had died already.
Before I ever met her.
Okay. And where did you meet Nanny Koo?
Met Nanny Koo when she came to college to pick up her daughter at the end of the school year at Stevens, which was my senior year, and I was waiting there for graduation. We met in that week between the end of Stevens' year and graduation at Missouri.
Where are we now, Dad?
This is Juneau Beach.
Daddy, where does this lead?
Just down to the beach, Dill.
And what is that water, what ocean lead to?
That's called the Atlantic Ocean. The war broke out in December 1941, and that's when everybody in college was ready to run into service. But I figured that it's only 6 months to go, 5 months to go, so I'll stick it out.
But you wanted to enlist, right?
Oh yeah, as soon as I got home, I ran down to 120 Broadway and enlisted in the Navy.
Is that right? The Navy?
Yeah. I flunked the physical. So from there I walked down to 39 Whitehall Street and enlisted in the Army.
Where they took you?
All you had to do was be breathing. Well, that was late June of 1942. I wasn't actually called into service until February 1st, 43. And I was on the phone every week calling up the authorities. Where's my number now? When are you going to call me? And my mother would be begging me not to call. She said, maybe they'll forget you. And the aviation cadet program couldn't digest all the applications, so you had to wait to be called in. I would be working at Auburn at the time, and I'd call up every week to find out, is my number coming up yet? I remember Mom said, don't call her, maybe they forget about you. I'm dying to get in, and she's trying to keep me out.
So it's 1943. You're home.
February 1st, 1943, I was inducted.
Okay.
I went to Grand Central, Pennsylvania Station, at a certain track number, and at 8 o'clock in the morning, I said goodbye. My father escorted me down there. I was given over to an Army personnel, and I ceased being a civilian. Actually, I had ceased being a civilian because I was sworn in before that and waiting to be put on active service. Well, we went on a troop train, February 1st, and from that time on, I became a good gym player.
In the meantime, you're going out with Mom, right? You're dating
Oh,
Mom?
well, I was she was my steady date in all of the spring of 42. Then I saw her, I flew out to Stevens College in 40, I took a train ride out there in 43 and visited school and her before I was inducted. Then I didn't see her again until after I became a pilot. They made me an instructor. Instead of sending me to a transition school for P-51s or P-47s or single-engine fighters, they sent me to instructor school. From Williamsfield, they sent me to Victorville, California, which is in the San Bernardino area, and there I taught P-39s. P-39 was the Air Cobra, a single-engine fighter. I would get a lesson in it, and then I'd come down and give a lesson to my student. Well, I had an altercation up there whereby I took off in a plane that had no electricity. The whole plane operated on electricity. If I hit the toggle switch down, the wheels should go down. They don't go. I didn't wear a headset because I knew that I had no electricity. Anyway, I landed wheels up. They gave me a 100% mechanical error and 100% pilot error and sent me back to Williamsfield in Arizona. I wasn't there, I don't think, 2 weeks when I came down from a flight one day and my CEO said, "Hey Turk, how'd you like to go to Stewart Field?" I said, "Great, I'll go." All I thought of, I get mileage, I got my Ford, 1934 Ford sedan, give me mileage and gasoline, I'll go any place. I said, "Where's Stewart Field?" He said, "West Point, New York." I don't want to go.
Why is that?
I don't want to go. I don't want to be under the influence of my father. The first time I got away from my father in all these years, they sent me back to New York. So.
I always thought West Point was your decision.
No, that was not an option.
Oh, wow.
In the Army, you have very few options. You go where they tell you to go. And the minute I got to Stewart Field, they took us up and showed us, this is the territory you fly in.
Yeah.
So when I knew where I could fly, the next thing I did was, when did I take my cross countries? A cross country was every month you could take a navigational training flight within 1,000 beeline miles of Stewart Field. Well, they have a map, and they took it with a tape measure, and they stretched that tape measure 1,000 miles. It took you to Columbia, Missouri.
Pretty good.
Well, what do you know? So that's the way I courted Mom. Every month I'd go out there, at least my own trip, and I'd go with Clem Nally or one of the other fellows who was making a trip west. I'd go along with him, he'd dump me off and pick me up on the way home.
When did you get engaged to Mom? Roughly?
Roughly, we got engaged in November of 1944 and got married in December.
Oh, not a long engagement.
We weren't taking chances on long engagements.
Yeah, okay, no kidding. So it was a civil ceremony?
It was a civil ceremony.
Who were the witnesses?
Performed by a Catholic who said, I haven't got the right to do this according to my religion. But anyway, do you take, and they pushed us together. We're standing on opposite sides of the big desk, his big desk.
Who's in the room with you besides Mom?
Everett, I believe it was Everett. Mom was there. You weren't at the judge's chambers when we got married.
Pardon me, I wasn't at the what?
Well, she had to be there. She married me.
What?
It was tough getting an apartment. Being Jewish,
3
it
weeks.
was not easy to get an apartment.
Really?
Yeah, we had a beautiful apartment up in Balmville, Balmville. And then they found out we were Jewish and they said they couldn't.
Good. At this point, the kids are all born, the 3 kids are born. You're looking for a home. You've decided not to go to Long Island. Westchester's where you want to go.
And we found this house. Again, it was $5,000 beyond our reach. I says, damn it, let's go for it. So Poppy came through with some help. And, well, he knew. I mean, it wasn't a bluff. It may have sounded like it. I did not like being under his thumb. Never did. I mean, we would have scraps because I did what he did. And he wanted me to be a salesman, and I didn't want to waste my time being a salesman. As it turns out, he was right. I would have been a good salesman if I knew then what I know now. I don't know. I don't know. The fact of the matter is that I had to get away from him because he was smothering me. I went with my father's blessings. I mean, he was all for it. But he didn't encourage me to leave, but he didn't make it difficult either. I left the firm and I went into a gas station. I got involved there with a third-party lease where Josh Hacker had the lease on the property. He put in the gas. I could pick the gas, but he is the one that made the deal with the gas company because that's where the money was. Yeah, I knew from nothing about cars, but they turned the car over to me to fix it, so I had to find out what was wrong. I replaced a fuel pump, I replaced a generator, I replaced everything until finally the car worked.
So why'd you get out of there?
Because my landlord, Josh Hacker, wanted me to put up the money for him to build me a station. I was supposed to get a station and then pay him for it. I was going to get a 3-bay station with a freewheel lift and two kinds of lifts. Freewheel and one where you drive on, the whole thing goes up. And it was a question of which came first, the chicken or the egg. I wanted the product for which I was paying. I didn't want him to spend my money to give me what's already mine. I got out of that deal alive.
So 1957, 1958, around there.
About.
Is that when the dry cleaning business?
That's when I bought Lesco cleaners
in Darien, Connecticut.
And why dry cleaning?
What?
And why dry cleaning?
Why? Because Jack Cusack was in dry cleaning in Kansas City and had done very well there. I made a deal with Joe Lesko, and I bought the place, a running business. I bought a small business because I didn't want to owe money for something I knew nothing about. And I bought it lock, stock, and barrel. And in the first year, I almost doubled the size of the volume of the business. I spent 2 years in Darien, and my father urged me to come back to Auburn, and that's when I made a deal with him.
How did you feel about coming back to work? I mean, now you're going back to New York City, back into the family business. Was this a good thing? Was this a bad thing? Finances aside, was it a positive or a negative? Did you see it that way?
No, I didn't look at it that way. In retrospect, looking at it today, I probably would have been better off if I chose a half a dozen other things to do. Anyway, we're running the business, and I was on the phone one day, and I agreed to take goods back from a customer, and my father slammed his hand on the desk. You're gonna give the business away, it'll be down, it'll be out of business, you'll be out of business in 6 months. He said, I want out. Pay me off. I ran to the phone, I called up the accountant. I said, hey, Bert, come on, Herbert Levis. Come over here, we gotta put something on paper. We had to pay him something like $70,000,
Okay.
which came out to $7,000 a month for 10 months.
Okay.
And during that period, I gave him a check. He knew that when money was tight at the time, he would believe the check would be in his drawer the following month.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, he was making it as tough as possible without killing us.
Okay. What was life like in Larchmont? Was it financially challenging? There was always food on the table.
Oh yeah, we never skipped a meal.
Yeah, never skipped a meal.
Uh,
And some of my fondest memories were, the Saturday night dinner at wherever the place was at the moment, whether it was Barron's or Monero's, but we ate well.
yeah.
And at some point you started to play a lot of golf, right? My memory says it was around 1965, maybe a little earlier. You started to play at Purchase.
Yeah, and we had our own group of people. There were 16 of us. There were a couple of outsiders who became part of our group. And I organized it so that we would bet against each other. And everybody who would bet, if they won, the money stayed in the pot. If you lost, you put money in. So the pot had to get bigger.
So what eventually happened to the pot?
At the end of the year, we went up to the Borscht Belt.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Nice.
And we would have a weekend
Very nice.
on the cuff. All the money came out of the kitty because we paid so much for dues, and then all the losings go in, and nobody took winnings out. And the guy who got the free ride was the guy that won all the time.
Yeah, that's
he
very
put
good.
nothing in, and he got a weekend for nothing.
That's clever. I didn't know that.
I would go to temple with my father. He would do things by rote, and I asked him, "Why are you saying this?" He says, "Because I'm reading it." He didn't know what he was doing. He did it because his father did it. And he couldn't teach me by example. The fact that he did it, and he didn't know why he did it, didn't teach me anything.
So why did you choose Larchmont Temple, and why did you become so involved in the temple?
Well, Mom wanted to learn about religion, the Jewish religion, and she went to a class that Chauffeur gave, and came a time she says, I don't have to go to class. I don't have to be told I'm deal with.
So the last couple of years have been, pretty tough. I mean, it seems like it's been
I would say the last 15, 18 months have been
yeah.
rough physically, mentally on me. Yeah.
You've spent a lot of time in the hospital.
Whew. A lot of time.
I'm assuming you've thought about it from time to time, the kind of legacy you've left and what it is that you hope people
sure.
say.
I've thought about it. I've been reminded about it fairly recently with cards that I've gotten since I've been at the hospital. Apparently I've made an impact on a lot of people, but I don't try to go around making impacts. You live a good life. Do unto others. I mean, it's so simple. I don't understand why people get so screwed up in their attempts to be a good person. The rules are fairly simple, and they're not hard to go by. I've had many, living in PGA National, it's not a Jewish community. I don't care how a person believes, what they believe. All the roads go to the same end. Apparently the Muslims don't feel that, but I don't understand enough of the Muslim religion. But among the Christian religions, you take this road, I'll take that road, you take that road. We're all going to get to the same place. Why should there be so much hostility because of religions? You do what makes you feel best. I don't want to give a lecture to the people who see this. But anybody who knows me knows that that's the way I feel about religion. Jim Habercorn, Catholic. Sal Ally, my vice president, Catholic. Most of the best people, friends we have, are Catholics. And fortunately, they live their own religion rather strictly, but they never criticize, fault me, or make any no comments about the fact that I'm Jewish. These are the people we live with now. I think about all these things. It's a normal everyday living. Those aren't issue things with me. They seem to be issue things with a lot of other people, though.
Sophie's principal on Thursday, let's see, was it Thursday? Yeah. Her graduation, got up there, and he's a nice fellow. We call him Mr. C. Dylan, what's his last name? Canigliando, something like that. And he got up there and he says to the kids, he goes, look, life doesn't have to be complicated. It was similar, Dad, and he just said, there's a saying, it's, do unto others as you would like have done unto you. He goes, but that's a little complicated. It can even be simpler than that. He goes, just be nice to people. Just be nice to people.
That's all.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be complicated. It seems to me like my guess is that people have told you what your legacy is, in the sense that they've thanked you, they've acknowledged you, they've said certain things to you. I'd just be curious, what are some of the things, other than the fact that you made an impact? We know that, but what?
No, I don't know that. That's the funny part of it.
Yeah.
I don't think I've accomplished anything. I raised a family. When I sit down and analyze the things that I've been involved with, all right, I've done a lot more than a lot of other people, but I haven't done anything spectacular. I mean, I think that I'm a Mr. Nice Guy that has accomplished very little. That's my opinion of myself.
You really think that?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I never heard you say that.
I'm not.
You're not self-conscious.
I'm not self-conscious about it. I am what I am.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I haven't been as considerate as I might have been to a lot of people. I could have been a lot more gracious and thankful to your mother for being my wife for 62 years. I don't compliment people the way they deserve. I mean, I got my shortcomings too, but there's no malicious thoughts behind it.
Well, there's a story that I was told several years ago, and it made a difference for me. And it's about the ball player Mike Schmidt. Do you remember Mike Schmidt?
Yeah.
Most people don't remember Mike Schmidt. Mom, have you ever heard of the name?
Never.
Yeah, Mike Schmidt was a ball player who played, as you know, in the 1980s.
I forget.
Yeah,
I forget who he
1980s.
played for.
Played, I think, for the Phillies mainly. I think he played a little bit for the Cardinals. But towards the end of his playing career, the reporters were gathered around his locker, and they were noting that the man had hit 500 home runs, had hit 300 lifetime average, had won a Gold Glove many times. I mean, he was really a terrific ball player, but he did it in a way that was the equivalent of vanilla. He didn't do it by hitting mammoth home runs, didn't do it by doing anything flashy, and didn't do it by necessarily in any way that made him stand out. So when you ask a group of people today if they remember Mike Schmidt, most people say they have no idea who you're talking about. It's not like asking about Babe Ruth or Barry Bonds or anything like that. So the reporters asked him the question, so what was the secret to your success? And he said, well, let me tell you something, boys. Every day I'd go out there and I'd take batting practice for an hour and I'd field 100 ground balls. And that wasn't a good enough answer for the reporters. They wanted to know about what magic pill he was taking. And they asked the question again, and he gave the answer again. He goes, every day I'd go out there and I'd hit for an hour and I'd field 100 ground balls. The point is that how he did what he did was not spectacular. The results happened to be wonderful and spectacular. And I think of that, and I think of that in my own life, and I think of that in your life, Dad, that you don't you don't have to necessarily put up big numbers on any particular day of your life.
Yeah, that's true.
But at the end of a 20-year career or an 85-year career,
I can see what you're driving at.
yeah.
And I imagine ego has a lot to do with it. I never thought I was an egotistical person. We all have ego. But I just did what I thought was right. I can't even recall some of the beautiful cards that I got from some of the friends.
How about your son David and your son Larry? They write beautiful cards to you.
Well,
they-
I forget.
keepers.
Yours was a very touching card.
right.
And I noticed you always have Dylan and Sophie and Rosemary sign the card with
Put
you.
a charming little
It's
thing down.
a very warm,
Means so much
touching
to it.
thing. And Dylan, just want to give you a squeeze. Thank you. I think my feelings now would indicate that it's the simple things in life that give you the most pleasure. It doesn't have to be a big, gigantic feat. That I thank Jack McCombs, who was the treasurer when I became president, which nobody wanted the job to do, being president. I became president because nobody else wanted it. They didn't like me. I volunteered. That was 12 or 14 years ago. Nobody wants a job. I don't do it for any personal gain. But a lot of people who I don't know send me notes in appreciation of how well Golf Villas is being managed. And what is my contribution? I've got good managers to live with each other. I got a bunch of egotists who think without them
if the sun wouldn't rise, I got them to work with other people as a team. I get the credit for it. That way, I mean, is that a worthwhile credit to give? I mean, do I deserve a credit for that? I didn't do anything. I did what a common sense tells you to do. I'm watching the clock because your time is running out.
Well, you know, a lot of people would say that it's not necessarily to look at the results one creates, but more, you know, the quality of one's life can be measured more in terms of how you went about your work, how you went about living your life. But I do think that to some degree it's both. I mean, because clearly it's not just how you lived your life that has made a difference for people, but I guess it's almost the same reason why we look in the mirror, because we can't see ourselves if we don't look in the mirror. So what we do is we surround ourselves with people who tell us the truth, hopefully, and tell us what a difference we made, and tell us what those differences were, and even though, because we can't necessarily see them. And obviously it's not just trees that were put here, and it's not necessarily just what fabric did you sell there. It's the quality of how you did it that has made a difference in the way the tree has shown up, the way the fabric has shown up, the way your children have grown up, the way your grandchildren are growing up. So I don't feel like I need to toot your own horn, but there's clearly a lot of people, and unfortunately they tend to come out of the woodwork when things are bad rather than when things are good. But I hope that you can really listen to what people have to say to you.
Well, I get very choked up, as Mom will tell you. I don't think of those things, but when I see it, the way people feel, and they write a note, it's touching. So I must have had an effect on people.
Is there anything that you do want to say to Larry or Trish or Nancy or Johnny or Adam or Jeremy or Sophie, Rosemary, Dylan?
Just thank you for being there. Oh. See, that's something I can't put into words. You've made it a wonderful life. All I can do is thank you, each of you. We've come close to perfection, but since we know there's no such thing as perfection, we'll accept it the way it is.
I think excellence will have to do.
Excellence is a good word. It's a high standard, and I know a lot of people, families, that would only wish they had what I have.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome, and thank you.
So, here's a personal welcome. Thank you to you, and to you, Dill. Thank you.
How about her?
And where would I be without her? A hell of a lot less person.
Thanks, Dad.
Okay, time.
I love you.
Love you too. Okay. The red light is still on. My favorite movie? I'll tell you. You go through the years, there are a lot of favorite movies. Among my favorites are The Adventures of Robin Hood, Dances with Wolves. I'm sure there are others that are more significant, but they come to mind first. As far as
singers and favorite song is concerned, well, Sinatra was Frank Sinatra is probably the best one among the singers. And I consider him a singer because I thought he was a good artist. He was more than a crooner. My favorite song, I'm Glad There Is You. That's my song with me. In this world of ordinary people. My favorite athlete, right now, Tiger Woods. As far as favorite president is concerned, although I didn't think so at the time, I look back now and think that Harry Truman was one of the great presidents. Favorite human being, I don't think I could pick a single person. I've known too many good people, and I wouldn't pick a single person. Favorite book, I remember that vividly to this day. And I keep a record of what books I read, because the minute I close the last page, I forget what the whole story was about. So I just write the titles down. And before I open a book nowadays, I look up to see, have I read this guy before? Yeah, I don't remember. I now mark the books to indicate without opening the first page. I look underneath or on top. I mark a little indelible line across the binding. But in picking a book, did you ever hear of The Fountainhead?
Of course, Ayn Rand.
You read it?
No, but a fine
It
book.
stands out. It was a book that impressed me from the time I read it. I remember it to today. I remember the characters in the book. It was a story about an egotist and an altruist, and the schnook in between. Favorite TV show? There's nothing today. Today, you know, when you don't hear, I look at just a bunch of silent films. So I can't pick a TV show currently. But going back, I remember at the time how everyone was wrapped with Uncle Milty. I mean, you just waited for his show. It was it. Favorite destination? Destination. I don't know. I enjoyed being wherever I was. Human being not related. I mean, you're talking about best friends, but I'll never forget Sid Phillip. We played golf together for many years at the purchase of Potato Hill in Vermont.
Potato
Which he owned part of. It was little more than a potato patch, but it had golf holes on it.
Well,
Anything you wish you had done and didn't. There was one thing. When I was flying out of Stewart Field, I always had that urge to loop the George Washington Bridge. You know, fly under the bridge and do a loop around it. But the numbers on the plane were so big that if anybody ever reported me, they'd hang me. So I never did.
that would have been a bad idea. I'll say for the record that the thing that you could be most proud of, I'll write it here, is the fact that he was able to, that you, Dad, were able to support a family and a lot of employees over many years. So for that, you did a good job. So I'm just showing Dad this little note that says he can be proud of the fact that he supported his family. So, next question for you, is there anything that you got from your parents, and I mean in a more emotional or spiritual way, that you're most grateful for, and anything that you didn't get from your parents that you wish you had.
My father was not one to express himself verbally, and yet when we go out to lunch with the vice president of the bank that we were in, he would tell me, "Your father's awfully proud of you." He would never say it to me, but he said it to the other people. That was the way he was. I'll never forget, on the New Haven Railroad commuting one day, I sat with a fellow who worked for my father when he was a kid. Now he's an adult and he has his own competitive business to ours. Not for the same fabrics, but he was also a fabric house. And when he spoke about my father, he said, "Your father was once tough guy." He wanted to say S.O.B. Tough guy. He loved that reputation, being a tough guy. He was as soft as melted butter. If you knew him. I knew him.
Next thing I'd like to ask, is there anything that you're most proud of that you gave your own children? And what do you wish you had given your kids that you didn't? Or that you might think you didn't?
I don't know, I would say, in what I gave to my kids, I would hope ethics, to do things ethically proper. I always said, don't ever lie. If you lie, you'll cheat, and if you cheat, you'll steal. It only gets worse. Never lie. If I have any regrets, and I keep saying I have none, looking back, I wish I had given more time of myself, my own time, to my children when I was growing up. I don't want to make excuses, but to bring up 4 children in a house that was not inexpensive to live in, with earnings from a business that did not make you rich, it was tough. And I just didn't spend the time with my children that I should have. Thank God you all turned out so well. I'm so happy for each of you now, because now, for the first time in all your life, I feel that all 4 of you are reasonably happy. To see Nancy as happy as she is after 2 marriages, she said, she comes here in the morning and she says, the minute I leave him, I miss him.
This guy meaning Alan? Alan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's nuts about him.
Yeah. That's
And
great.
he's nuts about her. I have a wonderful family. It starts with Mom. We go back to 1942. February 1942, she was a blind date. And we got married in December of 44. All right? And it's still holding up. I think it'll last. She's a wonderful person. There's no end to what she'll do for you. In these days of my bad health, she's been a super nurse. She's with me every minute and doing everything else in addition to minding me. I try not to be a pest to her, but wherever I go, she's got a glass of ice water right near me. As soon as the ice melts, she puts 4 cubes in. Honey, you've been wonderful. I know I haven't told it to you often enough during the time that I was in a position to, but I can't say enough good about you. Thank goodness everybody else that you know says it for me. I don't know of a soul that doesn't like you. The only difference is I love you, and I always will. You raised the family in spite of me, not because of me. There's a story connected with each one of the kids, and you're probably a part of every one of them. I haven't given any thought to it at the moment, but we'll start with Trish, the oldest. She made a couple of very bad choices for guys to marry, and it wasn't until she met Gretchen that she became a happy person. I don't look upon the same-sex marriage as being anything terrible. If it makes a person happy, all for the good. I think Gretchen is a wonderful girl. To introduce her as my daughter-in-law when she's my son-in-law. Gretch, I don't mean to. I'm not ribbing you, but I'm used to the fact that gay marriages are here to stay, and I'm all for it if it makes people happy. Larry, you've been a wonderful son, and you've given us 2 wonderful grandsons, and now you're responsible for a great-grandson. And the picture we have of the 4 generations of Turks is one that it'll live with me forever. Nancy, I'm happy to say it's a pleasure to see you as happy as you are with Alan. Alan Murphy, hey Murph, can you make the name sound a little bit Jewish? I'm not asking you to convert. Murphy doesn't go with Turk. You're a wonderful guy. You make my daughter happy. You make me happy. I'm satisfied. And then I come to you, David. You've been a person that makes parents proud throughout their lifetime. As a little kid, you had your problems health-wise, but you outgrew them for the most part. You've always been a source of pleasure. Now you're going to make me cry. I don't want to cry. I'm just very proud of you and the family you've raised. You've done a marvelous job raising them. They're good kids. I just didn't get to know them in their earlier stages. Now that they're older, I don't have any time for them. I don't have any time for anything anymore. However, each one of you have made me personally proud to be a parent of yours. I don't think it's necessary to go any more individual. We're talking about totals. My total life has been a pleasure for me. You're a part of it. You made it
You're doing good.
You've made it what it is, what it was, and I can leave this world very happy. Fortunately, with all the things that are wrong with me, I'm in no pain. I want to put in something that's selfish, but I am so glad that I was able to become a pilot. I mean, nobody wants to go to war, but when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, and I was a senior in college, I was ready to go enlist. But 4 months from graduation, 5 months from graduation, I'll wait. If I couldn't be anything else, I wanted to be a pilot. It's the only thing I wanted to be, not a foot soldier. And flying was the greatest thrill of my life. Just the fact that I could fly, and to fly a P-51. That was the epitome of flying. That was like driving a Rolls Royce after coming out of a Model T Ford. If I scared anybody driving in the car, my apologies. I think fast, I act fast, and I react pretty fast. Considering the mileage that I've driven, I've had very few altercations. And not too many tickets either. And that's not because I outran the police. All in all, I hope you get the feeling that I felt that I had a good life. Because I've enjoyed it. I'm enjoying it up to this very minute. The wonderful feeling to feel as good as I do about all of you. I can't single anybody out, but each of you is as special. I'm talking about friends, relatives, everybody. You're individuals, and I love you individually. I can't add to that. So thank you for being patient. Thank you for watching this. And who knows, maybe you'll get this from the other side. It's all I can give you. And you've given me all that you've got to give, and I appreciate everything you've given. Thank you, and farewell.
Thank you, Dad. We'll see you soon.
Raindrops are falling on my head, and just like the guy whose feet are too big for his bed, nothing seems to fit. Those raindrops are falling on my head, they keep falling. So I just did me some talking to the sun, and I said I didn't like the way he got things done, sleeping on the job. Those raindrops are falling on my head, they keep falling. But there's one thing I know, the blues they send to meet me won't defeat me. It won't be long till happiness steps up to greet me. Raindrops keep falling on my head, but that doesn't mean my eyes will soon be turning red. Crying's not for me, 'cause I'm never gonna stop the rain by complaining, because I'm free. Nothing's worrying me. It won't be long Sheldon Turk greeting me. Raindrops keep falling on my head, but that doesn't mean my eyes will soon be turning red. Crying's not for me, 'cause I'm never